¿Cómo definiría usted el éxito? Para usted, ¿qué es ser exitoso?
Éxito means the possibility to collect and identify your goals. I mean, if you have a goal and if you really reach the goal, this is an éxito. So it means that, but what is important is not only how to get there, important is how to have the goals, because goals are important. And are important also to have clear goals in order to achieve this achievement clearly.
Okay. O sea, poder definir metas, eso es parte del éxito.
Exactly.
Muy bien. Y usted, que es un hombre exitoso en su campo, ¿qué decisiones a lo largo de su vida cree que fueron determinantes para poder lograr?
The vision. I think that one of the most important things is to have vision. Vision means to think in perspective, not to think tomorrow, not to think tomorrow morning, but to think really in perspective and think big. If you start thinking small, your chances to get a success per year is very small. And I think that you need to understand that if you think that you can really conquer the world, probably you don't conquer the world, but if you start saying, well, I am ready to conquer my home, that's your stop.
Perfecto. Y durante ese camino que tuvo en su preparación, ¿hubo alguna persona en específico que lo ayudara?
Many of them. But if shall I decide who is my major mentor? My major mentor was a gentleman, a scientist, who was in the United States, first in Philadelphia, then in Chicago, then in Seattle. Is John Donald also. John Donald also is the person who actually teaches me two things. Number one, to be honest with yourself, scientifically speaking, and number two, to think big, to try to understand that. If you address a problem which is difficult in the proper way, sooner or later you can solve it.
Okay. Y además de que ha tenido varios mentores, ha sido usted mentor de varias personas. ¿Qué lecciones importantes ha aprendido de sus alumnos?
Well, first of all, I learn much more from my fellows than what I teach them, because being together with the young people is able to brighten your brain. I'll give an example. Every Monday morning at 9 o'clock in our lab, there is the presentation of the work done by a young fellow. It's going to be criticized, going to be reviewed, and it's good because it's much better to be criticized inside the system than outside the system. And I can tell you that when these kids are presenting different molecular pathways and different tricks in the lab, it's very hard to understand. This is the lesson they gave me. The only lesson I gave them is really to be honest, scientifically speaking. Because, if you're not honest, we can sit here and then write a beautiful paper which is going to be published in Nature tomorrow. Okay? But if this is fake, your credibility is lost forever. So don't cheat yourself.
Claro. Y además el trabajo no vale.
No.
Y me dijo que parte del éxito usted lo considera poder definir las metas que tiene. ¿Qué estrategias utiliza para poder definir sus metas?
I don't think there's a strategy. I think that the goals are inside you. It's just a sort of feeling. I think I want to be responsible for a supermarket. That's my goal. So I need to go to a supermarket, understand how the supermarket works, understand what's behind, and then try to scale up, always in the correct way, in order to be then available to be the director of the supermarket. In science and in medicine, you want to be helpful for your patients, first of all. When I come to you, you are across the table and you're God. You can tell me whatever you want. So I have no possibility. So I think you have to that if this is gold, you have to consider to make clear with yourself first and your colleagues that you have to be honest, you have to be open, and that you have to be to the point. And this is the goal.
Okay. Entonces, estudiar todo el campo alrededor de su meta es...
And first of all, I mean, listen to your brain and listen to your heart. El corazón.
Sí, bueno. ¿Tiene alguna recomendación que les pudiera dar a ellos y a nosotros también para poder lograr ser excelentes?
First of all, never give up. It's hard. It's really hard. But I can tell you that in 25 years, when you are going, all of you are going to be director of a big structure somewhere, you will remember these years as the most beautiful years of your life for two reasons. Number one, you are young. Number two, you don't have to care about how to get the money to do something because there is someone above you who actually is able to provide you with. So you have to work. I think that one of the possible way to achieve and to grow is also to spend some time abroad. Not because what you're doing abroad is much different from what you're doing here, but in being abroad means to meet people and then understand that the problem you have is exactly the same problem they have somewhere else in the world. And number two, this is real friendship. When you work together on the bench with someone, these friends are forever. We have a close friend. We work together in New York, who is now living in Santiago de Chile. And these friends, the two friends, so my son, this big. Now, Mario is 15, is a doctor. And when Mario took his degree, those two persons flew from Santiago to Trieste to be present at the ceremony. This friendship. And this is, if you work in your place, you have a lot of friends, but it's very difficult to really mingle because you have your own life, they have your life. But if you work abroad, and if you are exposed to a totally different environment, this is going to be very important for you and your growth. Not because you are coming publishing 1 or 2 or 3 papers. Okay, that's important, but because you grow.
Y también dice que ir al extranjero te hace ver que el mismo problema que tienes tú lo puede tener otro lado, pero creo que también es importante que también te abre la posibilidad de diferentes formas de resolver el problema, ¿no?
Exactamente.
Y lo mismo que aprender otros idiomas cuando estás pensando en otro idioma.
Not only that, but live in a different environment. You are used to get the bus at the same day, at the same stop, at the same time. And you go to the supermarket. Living abroad is totally different because then you realize also you have a much more time than you have here. And you can really enjoy it. I remember, when I was young, the day was finished at 2 o'clock and then I had a lot of time to work. Now my day is finishing at 11 o'clock. And at the end of the day, so what I've done? Nothing. Because phone calls, emails, blah, blah, blah. You have an excellent example here.
Of a workaholic?
Workaholic, and then I'll eat. Actually, if you come to my lab, the name of Norberto, it's which is called Manito by the way. His nickname is Manito. Probably I discovered. I discovered a secret, but that's and it's still there. So it really makes something a big family, whatever it is.
Correcto, muy bien. Y obviamente en medicina, en todos los campos creo yo, pero en medicina especialmente hay que constantemente actualizarse. ¿Hay algo en especial que usted haga para actualizarse o cree que la docencia apoya?
Well, la docencia is one thing, but I think it's much more important to, number one, to do something practically. If you're a resident, you don't have to be exposed to a formal lesson. You already had this for 6 years in the university. So you have to do. Learning by doing is the most important thing. And then learning by doing means that you see a case, you go to the PubMed and they say, okay, and then you read 1 or 2 or 3 good papers. And then number one, you get trained. And number two, you learn how to write and how to present the case.
Sí. Y dentro de el hacer y el practicar, obviamente está en los pacientes, que es lo más importante y es en lo que nos centramos como médicos. ¿Qué importancia o qué hace usted para construir una relación entre el médico y el paciente?
Well, as I said, between you and the patient, there is usually a table. And this is a barrier. I mean, you have to realize that the patient, when it comes to you, is horrified. I mean, and it looks at everything you say. I mean, if you say, okay, this is important this way, you say, oh, he told me this is important, but I mean, his tone was not very convincing. Then you have to behave properly in order to make possible to have a sort of a interaction with the patient. Interaction means that patient trusts you and you trust the patient. So the patient doesn't lie. Did you take the pill? Yes, I did. And that this makes also possible to deal with patient with something which may be really unpleasant. Let's say you have to say to the patient, you have a cancer, and then you have to go a treatment of radiotherapy and chemotherapy. You have to tell them. You have to tell your patients in this way because the patient is ready to accept. But never lie to the patient. Never. Because if the patient understands that you are lying him, it's finished.
Sin esconder cosas. Perfecto. Y bueno, ya decía que ahora está mucho tiempo trabajando en el día, termina muy tarde. ¿Cómo le hace para dividir la vida profesional de la personal? Porque desde nuestra perspectiva o cuando somos residentes y vemos a alguien muy exitoso, pensamos que la vida personal no existe o no puede existir.
No, that's not true. I think that, I mean, I know that the residents are under pressure doing a lot of things, but still, I mean, you must decide to take some time for yourself. I mean, this may be the weekend, maybe Wednesday, maybe Friday, but I mean, you have to have a sort of a small environment just for yourself and for your loved ones.
No sé definir un horario. Bueno,
No. You have to be more flexible. And if you are, I mean, let me give you one example. You're used to work 9 hours a day, more. Let's say 12 hours a day. Okay. Let's assume that now a witch say, okay, today the witch is a bruja. Say, okay, today it's free. You are shocked because you don't know how to feel the day. And this is bad. So you need to be flexible. I mean, if there is something to do, okay, I can work 24 hours, but then I have to rest. I can walk, I can swim, I can go to the theater. I mean, that's what you like most. But I mean, you have to, because this is a sort of a refreshment for your brain. I was telling Norberto last night that, I mean, my most creative time in the day is in the morning when I walk. I'm used to walk for 5 kilometers, or I mean, maybe in the woods or in close to the sea. And I walk by myself, and this is where I can really think about, because there's no phone calls, there's no mails, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, no one is there, because this is a small space I take for me.
¿Y cómo utiliza el tiempo libre? O sea, además de caminar.
Well, walking, reading, and enjoying my family, traveling sometime. But I mean, it's really, I mean, free time is flexible. I mean, you work on the schedule the whole day because you need to see Mr. Alvarez at 7 o'clock, Mr. Smith at 8 o'clock, and Mr. Rodriguez at 8 o'clock. If you're free, you're flexible. Say, what I do today, boo, I don't know. Let's go walking and let's see what happens. I want to go to a museum, I want to a museum. Otherwise, everything is fixed. It doesn't work this way.
Ok. Entonces, tener hasta el tiempo libre en la agenda, ¿no?
El cerebro libre.
Exacto. Muy bien. Y, bueno, sobre todo en la residencia, pero en general para los médicos y con la pandemia, pero la salud mental, el cuidado de la salud mental, ¿hay algo que usted haga propositivamente?
Well, first of all, let me try to be very clear. When we decide that someone is not healthy in terms of mental status, we compare with something which is what is generally accepted. Okay? Are we sure that what is generally accepted is the right one? I know. So I mean, I think that you must be you must realize that sometimes in your life could happen something which really change your life, and this is something you have to accept. So being mentally unstable may be related to something happening suddenly, but you have to take care of that. There's nothing you can do to prevent it. What I'm saying that you must try yourself to train yourself not to be to have too much anxiety, not to have too much depressed, just to be balanced. Of course, sometimes you are depressed, sometimes you are anxious. I mean, this morning you wake up anxious, say, "Hey, I have to is that and now is everything gone?"
Yeah. No, no veo.
Espero what?
Que todo vaya bien.
Will go definitely bad. Sure. Bad.
Y bueno, por último, ¿hay algún libro o película de cualquier tema que crea que le guste y que le gustaría recomendar?
Several. It's hard to pick up. I mean, one of the best movie I saw recently is an Indian movie. Is Slumdog. You see that?
Slumdog Millionaire?
Exactly. Slum. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. There's a lot of philosophy behind, and this is focused, and this is goals. The small kid got the goal to live with the lady, and he did almost everything to do it.
Sí. Sí, doctor.
No sé, ¿alguien quiere preguntar algo? Ahora que sí los tenemos.
Don't be shy.
Sí. En español, en inglés, en italiano, ¿cómo se sabe?
No, y en español. En español entiendo, no hablo, entiendo.
Ahora, si viera a usted 30 años, ¿algún consejo que se daría?
Al Claudio de los 30.
See, think even bigger.
Okay.
I mean, let me give you one example. When I decided to start with the medical school, I was not that much convinced because my other option was to take the law school. Law school were 4 years and medical school 6 years. So I said, let's start with the medical school. If you're going to be fed up with the medical school, I move from 6 to 4 and not make the other way around. So I think that, again, you have to be, number one, flexible, but at the same time to be very focused on the big event. I want to be the gastroenterology of a region. That's my dream. Mm-hmm. So I have to work in order to be able to do so. I want to be a family doctor in a small village in the middle of nowhere, because it's the way how I touch the patient. I know the patient. I mean, the relationship is human. I mean, it's much better to make, to have patients in a small village in Pueblito than in Ciudad de Mexico. Okay? It's much more human. So I want to select that village. Pueblito, which is the best Pueblito? I love step one. This is what you have to think at the age of 30.
Y usted a los 30 definió lo que quería.
Absolutely.
In the moment you say, I want this.
No, I want to be successful in my medical career. And I realize that in order to have a successful medical career, you have to understand what you're doing. And in order to understand what you're doing, you have to learn a method. This is what the research is doing. Research is teaching you a method. Mm-hmm. I do this, and I get this result. Then I do this, and I got this result. And you have to realize that this is an endless process, because you solve one problem, and then 10 more opens up. Mm-hmm. But this is the method. That's the method. This is why, in my opinion, the translational medicine, bringing together basic science and clinical science, is the most important one. But it's more important for you. Don't ask the patient to understand this. The patient doesn't want to have questions. Patient wants to be answered. I don't eat properly. My stomach is burning. This could be something in the head, usually. Maybe a gastritis, maybe an ulcer, maybe a cancer. Don't tell the patient this. Say, okay, we're going to solve the problem. No problem. So take this and this and this. And this is the positive way to address the issue. You know? And you must be positive in life. I'll give you an example which is very stupid, but makes the point. You're waiting for a bus, or you're waiting for a plane, or you're waiting for a train, which is delayed. Okay? You get angry. what can you do? Zero.
Like the Stoics.
Zero. So you have to be somehow philosophical, but at the same time, you have to be clear what you want to do when you are grown up.
La parte es un poco complicado definir.
Absolutely. But you must be open. But it's the same thing in terms of personal issue. I want to have a family, so I behave in a certain way. I don't want to be a family. I behave in a different way. And the goal is, you don't have to be very detailed on how to get there.
There's no correct answer.
No, I want to go from here to here. This maybe this way, maybe this way, because it depends on what. But this is the target.
Si pudiera cambiar algo en su trayectoria profesional, o tal vez no quiera cambiar nada, pero que sí.
Well, at the age of 77, it's very hard to say what shall I do if I would go back. Probably not. Not very serious, actually. Probably I will lose much less time in nonsense things, something like endless meetings. But you can do it when you are old enough to say, I'm the boss, I can do it. But when you're a kid, you have to wait for the boss to say blah, 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 and endless meeting. But I think that, again, you have to be in perspective, very clear with yourself.
A veces que hay como demasiados proyectos o demasiadas propuestas. ¿Cómo aprender a discernir? Como a qué decir que no. Y no siempre es fácil decir que no.
No, it's always difficult to say no. But I think that your instinct, your feeling is important. The instinct may be wrong, but that's life.
Mm.
When you can, be together with a man, where the beginning everything is wonderful, and then after 3 years everything is wrong. This life. But I think that again, you have to be very honest with yourself.
Mm.
And if you say no, you must tell at the end of the experience. If the experience is successful, fine. If the experience is not successful, you say, okay, I did it because I was convinced at that time that this was the right direction. That's it. Time will tell.
A lo largo de los años, ¿cómo podríamos hacer para no perder como esa parte humana de la medicina? Y a pesar de que estés cansado, etcétera, con mucho trabajo, estresado, pues nunca perder esa parte. ¿Qué nos podría usted comentar?
This is a very good question. I don't know in Mexico, but for sure in Europe. Now, the medical practice is just paperwork. 95% is paperwork. You don't even touch the patient, okay? Because the patient sits in front of you, gives you this pile of nonsense exams, and then you have to go through, and you realize that for the patient, what is important is not what is important for you, because he knows what he's really scared about. What I think is important is to step back, slow down, and actually start a sort of human relationship with your patient. Touch the patient, discuss with the patient, have time with the patient. Now everything is run. You have 15 minutes for each patient, forget it. 15 minutes may be endless for some stupid things, such a lady saying, well, I am that. And maybe 0 with someone with a very important problem. So again, flexibility.
Hay 3 cosas que se han descrito, que es enfocarse, viajar y tener buen mentoring, que son como las 3 cosas que estaría de acuerdo en esas 3.
Absolutely.
¿Alguna estrategia para generar confianza con el paciente al momento de la...
No, this is human. It's hard. We have to be very honest with ourselves. There are some patients, it's very easy to be interactive. Others, it's impossible because others are aggressive, others are nasty. That's hard. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
All the functional patients, although those guys will think to have all the possible gastroenterological diseases because they go into internet and they say, hey, I have this and this with symptoms. I have this. And then, I was used to say, if you have this, treat yourself. You see it.
Yo tengo de otro. Un buen médico, pues, nos han dicho que debe de incluir como los pilares de la docencia, la clínica y la investigación. ¿Cómo nos recomienda a nosotros llegar a ese balance, pues, de las tres como áreas?
Well, I think that at the very beginning, you have to be able to split the things. If you're doing investigation, I think it's much good to do an investigation for 3 months, just 3 months investigation, or 6 months, and not to mix investigation and clinical practice, because otherwise it's really unproductive. But at the end, you have to get together, and then you get together what you learn in terms of research, what you have learned in terms of doing with the patients, and what you've learned reading the literature. And this is the end. So it's like a puzzle. You make one piece, and one piece. And then at the end, you put everything together. It's like a recipe in the kitchen. You are a good cook, I assume. Yeah. So, when you cook, you don't put everything together at the same time. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm not able to cook, so I would say, but I saw someone cooking. So you have to something, and then you put together and mix together, and that's the end result. Did I explain myself?
But you do think you can do the three things, like...
Oh, absolutely. Residencia means 4 years. Is that correct? 3 years. Cousin. 3 years. Okay. So you have the possibility to have, in my opinion, what we are doing, for instance, now we are doing this program, which is very successful with the Philippines. What is called the sandwich program. The sandwich program is wonderful. Sandwich program means that one a resident is coming to our lab for 6 months or 1 year, and then is coming to do some research, and then bringing back what he or she learned, and then keep going in their country. That's beautiful, because it's a good experience for the student, it's a good experience for the group, and it's also a good experience for the whole thing. And if you come up with a 1 or 2 paper in international journals, this is even better. And this goes back to the idea that living outside your environment, it's a really growing experience. At the beginning, it's very difficult. The first month is horrible. It's really horrible.
Quieres morir.
Quieres morir, exactly. You feel, why? And then you start, and then when you leave, it's the worst day of your life. It is. But this is challenging. This is a challenge with yourself, because everything is different. The language is different, the food is different, the bus is different, the rules are different.
The culture.
The culture is different. But this grow. At the end, you really grow up